Hey, what's up guys? It's Texmer talking to you here. And today, I want to talk about the iPad Pro. This is my 2018 iPad Pro with the A12X chip. It's a 12.9-inch model, and it was the first iPad to feature this new squared-off redesign that Apple is now using on all of their products, since the MacBook Pros to the iPhone 13s, 12s, and the iPads also, the iPad Air, iPad Mini. And so, this was a very revolutionary device, and I think that it was very important in Apple history, being one of the most well-executed or well-launched products ever, in my opinion. The 2018 iPad Pro was everything you would want to on an iPad, and it's perfect in this state. Even in 2021, this iPad Pro, it's, in my opinion, still the best deal if you want to get a new iPad Pro or even a refurbished iPad Pro on the Apple Store. It's cheaper than the iPad Air, and it's as powerful as the iPad Air. It has a better display, a better authentication unlocking method, which is Face ID. It's better than Touch ID, of course, and it has USB-C, which is still not Thunderbolt, but it's very fast too. Of course, you have the 12.9-inch option, you have the 11-inch option. This 12.9-inch is a little bit more expensive than the iPad Air if you buy it refurbished, but it's well worth it because of the bigger display, better battery, better speakers. But in this video, I don't want to talk about the 2018 iPad Pro or even the 2019s or 2020s and even older iPad Pros. I'm here to talk about the future of the iPad Pro lineup and what Apple can do to make the iPad Pro survive this Apple Silicon transition that the Mac lineup is going through, and I believe, in my opinion, will sway a lot of customers from the iPad lineup to the Mac lineup. So, before I talk about what Apple can do to improve this iPad Pro in terms of software and even hardware, because I think that this is not perfect still, roll the intro. The 2018 iPad Pro was perfect, like I told you before, but it lacks some things. One of the things being was Thunderbolt 3. Apple just improved that this year with the M1 iPad Pro. They launched the iPad Pro with Thunderbolt 3 or USB-C 4. Now it's very fast when transferring files from your USB drives to your device. But one thing that it lacks is software support. So the iPad Pro doesn't support external display still. When it's connected to external display, this iPad Pro just mirrors the display with a weird aspect ratio. This is not good and it's not usable in 2021. Only if your app support it, like LumaFusion, but it only shows you the viewing angles. It doesn't show you the timeline or anything. So again, some apps support it, some don't. There's some weird backgrounds and backdoors that you can use to use your full screen on that aspect ratio, but I do believe that Apple needs to address this issue on the next iPadOS software update because it's a very big one. And now that we have very powerful chips on these iPads, like the M1, and you have the Thunderbolt 4 ports, there's no excuse to use these external displays. And so, this brings me to the next point, which is, I do believe that Apple needs to improve a lot in terms of quirks and features on iPadOS to make it competitive with macOS for productivity, such like the file system needs to be improved. I think that the Files app on the iPad Pro, it's not that good, it's not that well organized, and Apple simply just should port the Finder on macOS to iPadOS. Give it a little design tweaks to make it a little bit different, but make it work the same way, because I think it's very well executed on macOS, and now I think that Apple ported Finder to the iPadOS 15 or iPadOS 16, it would be a very huge and big success for everyone and would sway a lot of people from going to the Mac from the iPad, which, in my opinion, is one of the biggest factors when counting between these two: file management. Another thing that Apple could add to this iPad Pro in terms of software would be Calculator, a weather app of course, but a little bit more pro softwares, for example Final Cut Pro and Logic. These two are very important because I think that now with the Apple Silicon using M1 on the iPad and M1 on macOS, on Macs, it's possible for Apple to add the Final Cut Pro support. So I think that Apple should, because it would sway a lot of Final Cut users that just use the Mac because of Final Cut, but they prefer the iPad. So you would be winning even more people. You already have LumaFusion, you already have Photoshop, but those are not full-fat apps. You need more powerful apps for the iPad Pro because this beast can handle it. With the M1 chip and 16 GB of RAM on the most expensive model, you have more than enough power to power up a Final Cut Pro, Timeline, or even a Logic. So again, I think that Apple lacks in terms of software, and Finder and the Pro app support were one of the biggest lacks on the iPad OS 15. Of course, ProRes support was one of them too, but now Apple has addressed it, so that problem has been solved. Again, the Windows and people that asking, I want the multitasking is not done well. Well, I think that Apple has done a great job with multitasking. Using your fingers is very intuitive, and don't forget the iPad is a touch first platform, not a mouse first. So again, I think that even using a pointing and using the mouse and the new pointing system on the iPad, it works very well, the multi-system window. One thing that we should have, and it would be more easy to have, it's like a macOS organizing windows. You could have 3, 4, 5 windows open just because you have a lot of RAM on these iPad Pros, and it would be very possible to do so. So I think that Apple lacks a bit on that, refining the software of the iPad OS to look more like a laptop. Maybe just put it on a toggle on settings where pros can access it, because Apple may be a little bit afraid to turn the iPad OS into too much macOS and scare off the new customers that have gone into the iPad world. So expecting these customers to change their habits and get a little bit more confused with more pro software and more confusion and less intuitiveness that Apple is known for on the iPad, I think that's not good. So Apple should just turn a toggle on settings if you want to, but it should be off by default. Now let's get into hardware. I think that Apple needs to improve some things on the hardware side to make the iPad Pro competitive with the recent MacBook Pros. And those start by improving the I/O. The iPad Pro only has one USB 4 Thunderbolt 3 port right now, and of course one USB-C normal through the Magic case, but that's $350 to $400 expensive, so that's not a viable solution. Apple needs to introduce at least 2 more USB-C ports. I don't know, put one on the bottom, one on the top, and use the top bottom to charge, and the other top with USB 4, 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports just to pass data. Just like the MacBook Air, have 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports. So that would be the best solution for the iPad. Those are very small, they don't take a lot of space, and it will enable a lot of things. Of course, it would look strange, but it's better than putting them on the same size, because then you would be able to charge from the 2 different sizes. But since the iPad Pro has the same size bezel, it wouldn't look that much strange because there's no correct orientation. Of course, Face ID system is on the left side, but if you use it on the right, left, up or down, it works the same way. So I think that having 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports, one on the top and one on the bottom, would help a lot this iPad Pro. Another thing that would be nice to have would be wireless charging. I think that the iPad Pro would benefit to have a huge coil right here to connect MagSafe, or even have the MagSafe connector somewhere, or even use the Magic Keyboard to charge a more powerful device. I don't know, find a solution to wirelessly charge this iPad, because right now having to buy a $400 accessory to do so is quite expensive, and so I believe a small coil on the back would be nice. Connect the MagSafe charger from the iPad at the back of the iPad, and it would work very fine. The iPhone 13 charges very fast with the MagSafe. It's pretty thick, but the iPad Pro would handle it fine. So I believe that Apple could put MagSafe on this iPad, even if it made a little bit more thick the device, because right now it's very, very thin. And making it a little bit more thicker, having a little bit bigger battery and a little bit more thermal performance design would be nice. So I think that Apple could improve either the charging times, the battery life, or even the way you charge this device. Of course, the I/O, it's one of the things that I expect Apple to improve in the next couple of years, but the wireless charging, there's some rumors around, but I doubt it. Another thing would be the chassis and design. There's rumors that the next iPad Pro would be titanium. That's cool and all, but that only would sway some people that like these new fun materials. But titanium is very expensive, so let's see how Apple can scale this titanium iPad Pro. Of course, the iPad Pro would also take advantage of having a better, when I say better, it's not that much better, but a better mini LED display, because the new mini LEDs on the MacBook Pros 16 and 14 inch are just insanely good, even better than this 13-inch mini LED on the iPad Pro. I don't have that one with me right now, but the mini LED on the M1 iPad Pro 12.9 inch, it's good, but it has a lot of blooming problems, and when compared to the, of course, bigger but better 14 and 16-inch mini LED displays on the MacBook Pros, those are a step above. And so I think that Apple should use this second generation of mini LED on their next iPad Pro, so it's on par with the display quality between those two, because the iPad Pro already has 120 Hz mini LED display, but it needs to make it a little bit better. In terms of RAM, I don't think that Apple should upgrade it maybe give it a 32 GB option, start with 16, that would be nice, but I don't think that RAM is a limiting factor on the iPad Pro, just because I never seen any RAM problems on this iPad. But give the 32 GB option for those that want to, maybe when using Procreate with very amounts of layers, or even using Logic with a lot of tracks. So give that peace of mind to the end user. Also enable Xcode. Why I didn't talk about Xcode? Xcode is very important for coders, and if you could have an iPad Pro this size that can code very well, just give Xcode to the iPad Pro and you would win a lot of customers from the Mac. Again, this is very interesting to talk about, because the iPad Pro is such a fun product to use, but it has so much limitations that I cannot recommend you it over a Mac. Because a Mac right now is just the best option for you to buy, the best computer. You have the option to turn into a Windows machine by using virtual machines like Parallels. You have the option to turn it into a Linux machine. You have the option to use it as macOS, which has very powerful apps such like Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro. You have access to full Excel suite. You have the access to very much programs like AutoCAD or Autodesk. You have access to Blender, have access to a lot of programs that you don't have access on the iPad Pro. So even the software, and not so the software, but also the hardware, are limiting the iPad Pro for being a very competitive device, and even stalling and trying to shave off some sales from the Mac lineup. So again, I think that the iPad Pro needs a little bit more improvements on the hardware side, but the biggest improvements need to come from the software side. And I do believe that these software improvements need to come to this iPad too, because this iPad 2018 is so powerful that it doesn't justify Apple just to say, no, Final Cut Pro doesn't work on that iPad. And I'm like, why? Why Final Cut doesn't work? Well, you don't have enough RAM. Then I have 4 GB of RAM. Your old MacBook Pros with 4 GB work just fine with Final Cut. So I don't see the point. But again, I'm just kind of tired of ranting about the iPad Pro being so good, but not enough. So the iPad Pro needs more software compatibility. Apple needs to push developers to develop for iPad, and Apple needs to do it first, because the iPad has so much more advantages over the Mac than the Mac has in terms of hardware over the iPad. You have a camera system that could have the same camera systems as the iPhone, which could film 4K ProRes RAW and have all of those features, and even filming cinematic mode just on your iPad. You just film it on your iPad and then you pass it right away to your Final Cut Pro timeline, and that would be the most effective way to film. Imagine having the big 13-inch size screen as your canvas for watching your pre-overlay when you are filming a video. So imagine all of that on the iPad Pro. Imagine how powerful could this creative machine be. Right now, I just do thumbnails on it. Imagine, I just watch movies. I don't even watch movies. I started watching movies on my MacBook Pro because the screen is so good and I'm always at home. So, I mean, this device is good. It's very good. By the way, the Apple Pencil, it's a very good add-on. Like, this device is one of the best things that Apple developed for the iPad. It helps a lot with various things like studying or taking notes on class, or even drawing and Procreate. That's the main thing for people to buy an iPad Pro right now. It's the Apple Pencil. Imagine that. So again, the connecting method is also very good, but also I do believe that the camera systems on the iPad are much better. It has Face ID, which the Mac doesn't, but I do believe it will get in the next couple of years. It doesn't have a notch, the Mac doesn't, but the Mac has a little bit less bezels. So these things that compete within each other, I don't think that Apple needs to look at these two devices are two very different products. I don't think that Apple needs to look at them, oh, these two are the same. But Apple needs to look at them as the two competitive devices that one needs to make the other even better. And right now, I just think that the iPad is taking a beating from the MacBook Pros, and I don't think that it will recover if Apple doesn't do anything to save it. So, what are your thoughts on the iPad Pro? Right now, it's a very good device, but it's crippled by some software tweaks and some hardware fails. And that's it that I want to suggest for Apple to improve on the iPad Pro. Do you have any suggestions for the iPad Pro? If you do, leave them in the comments down below. And while you're there, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to my channel. Thank you for all your support. Follow my social networks, Twitter and Instagram. We are growing, and we are growing fast. Thank you. I'm very happy with this channel, and I will make even more videos, and you can expect them too now that we are coming to the holidays and Christmas time. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. This is my Thanksgiving day. Then I'm filming this, so I hope you enjoy your meal. And that's it for this video. What are your thoughts? Leave them on the comments down below. This is Textumer talking to you here. Bye.